Okay, so we are officially recording. I know we are a little bit late getting started, but have been moving forward into some issues that we're having with getting together, getting signed on to Cengage and stuff. So, and Deb is looking at me not amused. She was just looking at her watch, saying, "Okay, let's get her going." So everybody here has had is familiar with Canvas and Cengage. Now, the deal with business communications, there is not as much writing in it as I would like to have. So what writing we do have, I do. All right, let me go back. Let me digress back to what I normally say, which is when you go out to get a job, and most of us old timers kind of know this, that when you're looking for a professional job, two major skills people want are be able, first off, be able to communicate either verbally or written, and communicate effectively up and down the chain of command. And the other one is be able to, do basic math. If you get those out of the way, you're a leg up on I think, seems like half the population. And since we're in business communications this time, really try to sentence structure, grammar, spelling, punctuation. I'm a little bit more difficult in this class than I am with the other ones, just because it's just kind of the necessity of being able to communicate, and we're going to do most of it written. So if you see that your scores aren't quite what you want or what you expected, it's probably because of like the sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, spelling, one of those things. If you have that question, now back in the old days, you would hand me a piece of paper and I would read it, and I'd take my red pen to it and I'd circle and mark it up and do arrows and hand it back. Well, electronically, it's not quite that easy. So the way I usually do that is if you're like, hey, what did you count out for in Grammy? They talk about verbal communication, grammar, spelling, punctuation. What I usually do is if you ask me that, I'll go back and rewrite it and I'll send it to you. So to give you a comparison of what I did, with yours as compared to what you did. And then if you don't feel like that grade is fair, let me know and we'll talk about it. I'm not here to try to tank anybody, guys. We're here to learn, move through the program, get better at what we do. I remember, when I was going to Stillwater, there was a professor, I can never remember his name. He was from, I think, Austria. And so not Australia, but Austria. He had this real thick European accent. And he was the guy had a brain as big as, my car. And it was a 3,000 or 4,000 level financial class. It was risk management, whatever it was, and that's mostly calculus. And he would put the eraser in one hand and the marker in the other. And he would start out with these formulas. Everybody got that? Whoosh, whoosh. Well, I think, and if my numbers may be off, but if I remember right, we started out with like 30 people in that class. We ended up with like 9. It was like his life's work to run us out. You'd finish an hour and a half. I think I had him on like Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour and a half. I'm a grown man. I played ball when I was in high school. I was a soldier. I did construction. I'm kind of a man, and I wanted to come out of that class weeping every single time. It was just brutal, and that is not what we're here for. Because if you ask me what I learned in that class, I have absolutely no idea. I learned to regurgitate some formulas back and make a grade. And so that's not really helpful. So we try to make it as good for everyone as possible. And hopefully, that helps. I don't have any ulterior motives, or I'm not an evil mastermind trying to plot your downfall or destruction. Unless it's Angel, and yeah, I'm definitely against her. So this is what the BCOM looks like. I know if you, for those who are not here, if you can't get on Cengage through the link under modules, then go to www.cengage.com and sign in directly through the website. If you do that, and then you should be able to go back and get to it again. So hopefully that helps anybody that's not here out. All right, so discussions are the same. The assignments are the same. Now where is I thought I had an excellent quote on here. I don't remember where it went. So that's unfortunate. Has everyone here seen my Jordan Peterson video on Here's Why It's So Bloody Hard to Sit Down and Get Work Done?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We might watch it again just because it is really good. And when you watch him this time, watching from the perspective of how he not maybe the content that you've already heard before, but how he communicates with his class, how he moves around. All right, Violet. How he moves around, how he picks a student to kind of talk to, and then he moves over to the next student as to kind of focus what he's saying. There's a little self-deprecating humor in on it. He's moving around the room. He's Violet. It's a really good example of how to kind of get someone's attention in an oral presentation. So we'll just watch that one more time real quick. It's only a few minutes, and I always think it's really good as well. So let me make sure I share the sound, and we will do this. I will shut off my mic.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk? What, and not only that, but why is the serpent's punishment to crawl on it?
Your attention, for example, is mediated by unconscious forces. And you know that perfectly well. And this is another Freudian observation. If you're sitting down to study, for example, your conscious intent is to study, but you know perfectly well that all sorts of distraction fantasies are going to enter the theater of your imagination non-stop and annoyingly, and there isn't really a lot you can do about that except maybe wait it out. So you'll be sitting there reading and your attention will flicker away. You'll think about, I don't know, maybe you want to watch Jane the Virgin on Netflix or something like that, or maybe it's time to have a peanut butter sandwich, or you should get the dust bunnies out from underneath the bed, or it's time to go outside and have a cigarette, or maybe it's time for a cup of coffee, or it's like all these subsystems in you that would like something aren't very happy just to sit there while you read this thing that you're actually bored.
Do y'all notice that as he engages the room, it's like he's engaging the entire room, but he's also speaking to you personally, especially if you're sitting there. I know with the video camera it's a little different, but if you notice, he'll look at people up and down the rows, and he'll even point to them. He kind of, and so he gets everyone involved. And he doesn't stand still much. He keeps you looking at him left and right. And that's just, like I said, this effective communication techniques. He speaks clearly, although he is very Canadian. So every time he says a boot, I usually giggle, but that's because, I'm a child.
By, and so they pop up and try to take control of your perceptions and your actions non-stop. Maybe you think, well, this is a stupid course anyways. Why do I have to read this damn paper? And what am I doing in university? And what's the point of life? It's like you can really get going if you're trying to avoid doing your homework. And then you might think, well, what is it in you that's trying to avoid? Because after all, you took the damn course and you told yourself to sit down. Why don't you listen? Well, because you're a mess. That's basically why. You haven't got control over yourself at all. And no more than I have control over this laptop. Okay, so there's the memory function of the unconscious, and there's the dissolutive function. That's an interesting one. The unconscious contains habits, once voluntary, now automatized, and dissociated elements of the personality, which may lead a parasitic existence. That's an interesting one. I would relate that more to procedural memory. You know, so what you've done is practice certain habits, whatever they might be. Let's call them bad habits. And you like those things to get under control, but you can't. So maybe when you're speaking, for example, you use like and you know, and you say a lot. And you've practiced that, so you're really good at it. And you'd like to stop it, but you don't get to, because you've built that little machine right into your being, right? It's neurologically wired, and it's not under conscious control. And anything you practice becomes that. It becomes part of you, and that's another element of the unconscious, a different part. And then there's a creative part, which is that, well, you know, you're sitting around and maybe you're trying to write something, or maybe you want to produce a piece of art or a piece of music, or maybe you're just laying in bed dreaming, and you have all these weird ideas, and especially in dreams, it's like, where do those things come from? And even more strange, one of the things that's really weird about dreams, and almost impossibly weird, is that you're an observer in the dream. It's like a dream is something that happens to you. Well, you're dreaming it, theoretically, so how is it that you can be an observer? It's almost like you're watching a video game or a movie, but you're producing it, at least in principle, although the psychoanalysts would say, well, no, not exactly. Your ego isn't producing it, your unconscious is producing it. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. And of course, Jung would say, well, it's deeper than that. The collective unconscious might be producing it. It's, in some sense, it isn't you exactly, or it isn't the you that you think of when you think of you. And that's the ego from the Freudian perspective, the you that you identify with. That's the ego. And outside of that is the unconscious. The id, that's more the place of impulses. And you could think about those as the biological subsystems that can derail your thinking, right? And that govern things like hunger and sex and aggression and your basic instincts is another way of putting it. And it's a reasonable way of thinking about it, because these are subsystems that you share with animals. You share them certainly with mammals. You share most of them with reptiles. You share a lot of them with amphibians, and even going all the way down to crustaceans. There's commonality, for example, in the dominance hierarchy circuits. And so these are very, very old things. And the idea that you're in control of them is, well, you're not exactly in control of them. And I would say the less integrated you are, the less you're in control of them, and the more they're in control of you. And that can get really out of hand, you know. You can be, like with people who have obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, which seems to be, I would say, the dissolutive elements in some sense of the unconscious, the way that it's portrayed here. Poor people with obsessive compulsive disorder, they can spend half their time doing things that they can't really control, and they have very strong impulses to do them, and it's very hard on them to block them. You know, they'll almost panic if those things are blocked. And then you have people with Tourette's syndrome, you know, that they'll be doing all sorts of weird dances and spouting off obscenities and imitating people without being able to control it, and sometimes a little bit of antipsychotic medication can dampen that down, but it's as if there are these autonomous semi-spirits inside of them that grip control over their behavior and make them do things. And you know, you find that to some degree in your own life, because maybe you've become very attracted to someone, even maybe you don't want to be attracted to the person, and then you find yourself, you know, texting them when you know perfectly well that you should be going to bed, and you know, you're in a grip of something, and you can't control it, and that's all part of the unconscious and all part of what Freud was studying.
So anyway, looking at this from a different perspective, and if you notice, as we move into the virtual world here,
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards,
Oh
but
my
did you know
God.
we also print
I
that
hit pause.
and that?
And because if you'll notice when I'm talking to you guys here, I actually do. I'm looking at each one of your pictures, at least the ones I can see, and even the ones I can't, and I'm pointing off to here, and it's not quite as effective on the way we do it here. And it's so you have to find a way to, you know, kind of make up for that lack of direct contact. So those of you who do have your cameras on, I love you very much. It helps me immensely. Violet's like, okay, fine, Elise, fine. You're gonna call us out. No, I've had some classes where nobody turns on their cameras, and so I'm just talking to names, and you don't get a whole lot of responses back because there's even, your physical responses. Like Charlotte nods her head a lot when I'm talking, and so, which is fine because now I know Charlotte hears me and she's listening and she's agreeing or she's disagreeing, whatever she's doing. It helps me focus what I'm trying to say here. So as we learn through our communications here, you're going to have to remember, when you communicate, there's a sender and there's a receiver, and each one of those is just important as the last one, as the next one. If I'm sending a message and for some reason you're not receiving it, okay, then it might as well not be happening. The same thing with the responses you get back when you're receiving a message. I can tell who's doing it, and that's just all part of the communication process, because you can tell when someone is not listening or only listening with one ear. My wife puts up with that all the time, because we'll have entire conversations, and then a week later when she's like, okay, you ready to go? And I'm like, ready to go where? She said, I told you we were going to have dinner with so-and-so on Saturday night. And I'm like, no, we didn't. So somewhere in that process, there was a breakdown in communication. And obviously it was her not sending the a message properly, because, it couldn't have been me. No way. But I have 4 cats and a puppy plus a teenager who does TikTok. Wow. Puppy plus a teenager. Okay. For some reason, and that's not your fault, I saw 4 cats and a puppy, and then somehow I imagined 4 teenagers, which, would give me nightmares.
I had 2 teenagers over the weekend.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my children were only
I get that. My 7-year-old, because he's sick at the moment, so we're laying here in bed while I'm in class, and he's like, I want to say hi, and I'm like, no, I'm in class.
he is more than welcome to say hi. What's his name?
His name's AJ.
AJ. Hey AJ, you make sure your mom does all her homework and studies, okay?
Say hi.
Sierra, tell him we've already seen him, so he might as well wave at us.
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well wave.
Adorable.
Yeah. My grandson's talked to everybody before too, so yeah.
How old you say he was? 7?
He's 7, yeah.
All right. So he's, I have 2 grandsons. One is 10 and one is 3. So, but we always had the house where all the teenagers would come. So both my kids, they were only 2 years apart. So I had 2 teenagers here. So there'd be times I would get up in the morning. I'd get up on a Sunday morning, open the bedroom door, and all of a sudden I'm stepping over people sleeping in the floor, on couches, in chairs. It's just like some sort of, house for runaway teenagers or something. And then I would go to get something to eat, and of course my refrigerator would be empty.
I had 5 teenagers. Imagine that at one time.
See,
Yeah.
it's just, and I don't even know how you would feed them. In fact, even in their late 20s, they're still friends of my sons and my daughters. But they'll come over and they'll knock and walk right in the door and say hi. And there's a few of them that just still go straight to the refrigerator. So,
Okay.
you just get used to it. But that was just as an aside. So, does anyone have any questions or comments on how business communications works? We all know how the discussions work, and please guys, do the discussions. I don't remember which one of the guilty parties, but some of y'all put those off, and they are such a big part of grade.
I feel so called out right now.
Who was that said that?
Me.
if
Sierra,
you,
I'm not gonna lie. He didn't even call you out, but you just called yourself out, Sierra. You just called yourself.
No, in business math, I would like wait for the last second to do the discussion because I was trying to do all the rest of the schoolwork.
the discussions are 25% of your grade, so they're very important, you know. So please, and then try to get, if you get the, oh, is Deb talking? I think you're talking to us. Okay. You could do everything perfectly and still have a C in the class if you didn't do any of your discussions. And I understand how difficult they can be, because like he said in that film, your creative part jumps out at you at the most inopportune times. When you sit down in front of your computer and say, okay, I'm going to write now, and you do this and nothing comes to you. And I get that as a guy who, you know, who's been writing for years and years and years and years, you know, and people, you know, like he said, like right before you go to sleep, you have all these brilliant ideas. I have my most brilliant ideas in the shower. Just one of those things.
Yep.
Angel's like, yep. So, but somehow you got to work around that, because it's just, you know, we're still on a deadline. And if as many people as possible can get their original post done by Wednesday, that means everybody else has something to answer to and move the conversation along. Just remember that, you know, hey, good job, Deb. I like what you said isn't really a reply. We need to try to move the conversation forward. Okay. And that would be pretty great. And you know what? I'm just thinking, I think this is the first time I've ever seen Janessa. I think she's been hiding behind that the entire time.
It's okay, Janessa, because that's gonna be me. He will never see my face. I'm so sorry. You will never see my face. I'm sorry, Mr. Diamond. You will always see Celine. You won't see my face.
You know, I'll have my way.
Sooner or later, maybe.
Are you terribly disfigured? Are you like missing a nose? You look like
No,
Voldemort. Is that what it is?
I do not look like the Elephant Man. Let's just say that. But I just do not want to show my face on here.
Well, and let's be honest, you know, everybody's self-conscious. They say the camera adds 10 pounds. But with me, it adds 10 pounds to 5 pounds to each cheek. I get on the camera. I look like a great big globe with white racing stripes right now.
Well, let's just say this, Mr. Diamond. I always like your green screen background. I always.
Yeah,
like
that's what. Yeah, Violet just said something about my background. Well, I always do duck butt for Deb because that's her email.
Ollivanders.
And this is Ollivanders. I also had earlier, I don't know if you guys saw it. I was with my friend John and Sam.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me cancel that. Where's John and Sam at? There we go. We were having breakfast. So I loves Pulp Fiction. So just the discussions are really important. I really, you know, I'm kind of almost on my knees begging at this point, just do them, you know, and I know they're difficult. I know sometimes they suck, but you know, it helps you communicate. And one of the best skills you can have is being able to communicate and move a conversation forward in a written manner. And it's especially important now post-COVID, where we are still doing things virtual. A lot of people are doing things virtually. My
Yep.
son-in-law, since COVID started, has not, I don't think he's been in the office. He works for an engineering company in downtown Tulsa. I don't think he's been in the office 3 times in 2 years. He now completely works from home. So all communication is by email.
Yep.
So that is, we're living in that post-COVID world where our written communication is becoming more and more important. And we have to be able to find our tone and inflection and get our point across in a written word. And we know how difficult that is, right? And that brings me to no text talk on your discussions and stuff, please. But you know, and because it's you have to be really careful communicate in a written manner, Ollivanders, yeah, Lottie, has anybody ever texted someone or got a text and got really mad or offended because you felt there was a tone?
I hate when people text me with exclamation points because I always feel like they're yelling at me for no reason.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm that person to type in all caps. Okay, I'm the type. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. If I feel aggressive, I don't use exclamation points. I type in all caps. I'm so sorry. I'm that person.
We have
Go ahead.
and at work in our system, we type in all caps, but we communicate with teams because we have 6 sites. And so you'll never know if you're getting caps or not. And everybody's just like, sorry, well, I'm not yelling, so it's a thing.
Violet says she has a short temper. She'd rather text. Janessa the cow went away. So now it's back to Janessa. Now I don't even know what that is. Is that a badger? But and that's it, and if you're like my 71-year-old mother who only texts in caps, that's just, and she's 71 years old. You're not going to break, or she will be 71 in about a week and a half. You're not going to break her of that. So you either think she's always yelling at you or she's never yelling at you. And no, my mother, she's probably always yelling at you, but that's a whole another story. But so let's just work through this, and you guys know if you have any questions, I try to get back to you as soon as possible. I know it was who was supposed to talk to me after class. It's Elise. Okay, I already forgot Elise. I apologize. If you don't hear back from me within an acceptable period of time, then I either didn't get it or I haven't seen it yet. Sometimes I drop off on the weekends. I had some committee meetings all day Saturday, so I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was in Oklahoma City by 8 o'clock in the morning. I was there all day in meetings. So if I didn't reply on a day like that, that's one thing. But I try to get back as soon as possible because I know you guys are waiting. And if you really need me, text me or even just pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I have a problem now. Let's fix this. And if I can, I will. If I can't, then I'll tell you, we'll fix it in an hour, or we'll fix it when if I'm in the middle of driving back from someplace, we'll fix it when we get here or there, and we'll try to work it out. So I'm here. We're trying to make you guys successful. It's about learning, about moving forward, and we'll do our best we can. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop recording, which everybody knows